Hello and welcome to Hong Kong Lit Club, the monthly show for written word enthusiasts hoping to embark on a literary journey through Hong Kong. In this podcast, we will explore what happens when we look beyond Hong Kong as an Asian financial hub and a so-called cultural desert. My name is Julia and I will be your host. I'm a librarian by trade, a Hong Konger at heart, and someone who believes in the power of words to tell the story of a city. Without further ado, let's dive in. Who are the writers of Hong Kong, and what do they have to say? In today's episode, we will be talking to Malaysian author Maureen Tai about her prose poem, Life We Can No Longer See, which tells the story of a Hong Kong teenager grappling with the aging of his beloved grandparent. The poem was originally published in Cha, the Asian Literary Journal, in 2019, and has just been republished by Uncharted magazine. This poem was inspired by the sounds of Hong Kong, where Maureen has lived for many years, and it remains the author's mother's favourite piece of all her writing to date. Before we chat to Maureen about the inspiration behind the text, let's listen to the poem by the author herself. Sit back and relax. This is Life We Can No Longer See by Maureen Tai.
Yeye loses the use of his legs when I turn 12. 2 years later, he loses the use of his eyes. Overnight, my grandfather has become as helpless as a newborn baby. This is the first time someone I've known all my life ages in real time. Immortality really is just the stuff of comic books and computer games. I imagine that old age feels like being in the departure lounge at the airport, bags packed, boarding pass in hand, waiting for the inevitable flight that's been delayed. Counting the hours, the minutes, the seconds. How does Yeye bear it? Every time I look at my grandfather, I feel like crying. Sometimes I do. I'm also embarrassed, and that makes me feel guilty. But mostly, I'm terrified of the death that will take him and everyone that I love, though I know it is inescapable. Yeye and his helper move in to live with us. He spends most of his time in his room, which is next to mine. He doesn't care if it's night or day. He's right when he says it hardly matters anymore. It's a sort of freedom, he proclaims. It's a form of torture, Mum grunts. She's a light sleeper, and his nighttime music rouses her. She likes Frank Sinatra, but less so at 3 a.m. Looking after Yeye becomes part of our daily routine, an arduous but necessary labor. I'm ashamed to admit that I do everything to avoid it. Schoolwork and piano practice suddenly become much more interesting. The least you can do is spend some time with him, reproaches Mum. It's not like he has much left. In that case, what's the point? The voice in my head hisses. And then it whispers the question that gnaws at me. What if he dies on me? What do I do then? Things change when Uncle Sam upgrades his car from a Mercedes to a Tesla, Model X, the one like the Batmobile, with doors as silent and slick as beetle wings. That drives Dad crazy, but he can't afford a new car. Instead, he gets the new iPhone XS in gold. Dad and his brother have always been competitive. I'm glad I'm an only child. Because of this sibling rivalry, I inherit Dad's old phone. I'm the last kid in my grade to get a smartphone, but my device has no connectivity, no amusements, no distractions, no evil electromagnetic rays to fry your brains, according to Mum. We're the only weird family in the halls of Hong Kong without Wi-Fi. Still, the phone has its uses. There's a camera that I can take selfies with, and there's a really cool app called Voice Memo that I can record stuff with. At least I think it's cool. Yeye thinks it's cool too. There's a game that we start to play. I can't remember how it came about. Probably on one of those late school day afternoons. Bored numb by homework, I idle outside the bathroom, waiting my turn. I can see into Ye's room. He's sitting in his chair by the window, staring into the fading light like a sunflower. I hesitate. Listen to this, I say, holding the phone up to his ear. The old man listens as I play the 16-second recording. He cocks his head to one side, his smile widening. Hey, your dad in the toilet, he guesses. No, your daughter-in-law, I laugh. Ye chuckles. Have you heard of the saying, like a female cow peeing? That's your mum, all right. We giggle as I hit the play button again. The next day, I take the phone into the kitchen. Our Filipino helper has just finished dissecting a small mound of vegetables. Hairy gourd, Buddha's fist, and lady's fingers. When she spots that I'm pilfering snacks, she chases me out. Hey, spoil your dinner. She flicks at me with her dishcloth. Yeye is half asleep in his chair. I slip a wafer biscuit between his fingers. Guess who? I ask, as Yeye stirs. The recording I play is a little longer this time, almost a minute. It doesn't take him very long to figure it out. There is no other way. Hi, Auntie Naida Law, singing her Christian songs. He clumsily lifts the biscuit to his quivering lips. I look away. You know, my hearing is so good now, Yeye says with pride. I think it got better after I went blind. He shakes his head ruefully. Aye, when I could, I didn't use my eyes enough. He moves his face closer to where he thinks mine is. Hey, I can hear all sorts of things that I couldn't hear before. A pause. Do you know you talk in your sleep? That's news to me. You can't hear through walls, Yeye, I retort skeptically. He sits back. You might want to try recording yourself sometime. So, how? Asks Yeye a few days later. It is easier to record several hours of sleep than to listen to the playback for subconscious confessions. I think you've tricked me into listening to hours and hours of my own breathing, I admonish. The old man chuckles. Oddly, that makes me glad. Sunday evening. We're waiting for the rest of the troops to come over for our weekly family dinner. Pompous Uncle Sam, glitzy Aunt Doris, and my annoying spoilt cousins. I lay front forward on Yeye's bed and scroll down the list of recordings. What's this one? I hold up the phone and crank up the volume. Dull, hard thuds followed by a sharp thwack. Then more dull, hard thuds. Hi, what else could it be? Badminton law? With such short rallies, must be you and your dad. See? Hi, can't get it over the net more than once, Yeye scoffs. Stop. Scroll, stop. Play. And this one? A low mechanical groan that rapidly crescendos before fading, followed by ding ding, ding ding, ding ding. That's so easy. The tremolo. You think I was born yesterday? The next one's harder. The metallic clatter of small wheels hitting the road, footsteps trailing behind. Yeye pauses and furrows his brow. One of those hand-push trolleys that grannies load up with flattened paper boxes and old newspapers? Another point to Granddad. I have to admit, he's pretty sharp still. Okay, the next one is an expert-level question, I announce. I hit play and set the volume as high as it will go. The rumble of conversations, passing footfall, the hum of cars. Then the faint click of something small hitting a smooth surface. It is deliberate, thoughtful even. A long pause, murmurs, muted comments, another click. A chuckle, then the sound of a lighter being struck. Wah, Yaya snorts. How long do I have to keep listening? I ignore him and play it again for good measure. Well, do you want a hint? I offer. Don't know leh. A smug pause. A bunch of old geezers playing Chinese chess, he finally says. Sharp as a tack he is. Aye, I've eaten more salt than you have eaten rice. Don't you find it stuffy in here? I switch on the electric fan. I sit cross-legged on the floor and play another recording. Several sharp rustles, not perfectly in unison. Then again and again. The earwax melting strains of a Chinese opera tune float in the background. A dog barks, a child laughs. Yaya turns his face towards my voice even though he can't see me. A flicker of anguish gone as quickly as it appears. That's the public park, he says quietly. Auntie's doing a fan dance. The song is Departed Sparrows. You know who loved that song? Lily, your grandma. He turns his face away. You were just a baby when she died. I stop the recording. Suddenly, all I can hear is the whir of fan blades that have no beginning and no end. After that, we don't play our game much anymore. It's no substitute for the real thing anyway. The sight of my grandfather shrinking before my eyes frightens me. But I don't think as much about the D word when we're doing something together. The shared activity helps me, and I'd like to think it helps him too. As the summer holidays roll around, I suggest that I take Yaya out for his walks and give Auntie Naida a break. I'm old enough and, more importantly, strong enough to handle a wheelchair. Mum is so elated, she tears up. You're a good grandchild. Dad is suspicious. You're not playing Pokemon Go on that phone, are you? Yaya, he is ambivalent. Not really bothered go or not go. We go, every day. We wind our way to the wet market, full of fruit sellers who bray, butchers who chop freshly slaughtered meat, and seafood vendors who scrape scales off glistening fish. We head to the local tatantang, where waitresses bark orders, aunties gossip over French toast drowning in condensed milk, and labourers in grimy vests cuss and argue over iced coffee. Good milk tea? I take the empty cup from Yaya's hand and brush the porokbao crumbs off his lap. Another thumbs up. We get our exercise at the public park, which displays signs that prohibit every activity except breathing. Runners pant as they pass our bench, toddlers stumble drunkenly around their nannies, and elderly folk noisily exchange news and not-so-news. Smells too much of sweat. Full of old people with one foot in the grave, he grumbles. Yaya's favourite haunt turns out to be the working pier near our apartment block. In the evenings, it's also the quietest. The only sounds are the gentle lapping of waves against concrete, the crunch of debris underfoot, and the eerie call of the occasional seagull. We sit together, and I watch the sun go down. The red, burning orb is like a salted duck's egg yolk, suspended on the horizon before sinking into the unknown depths of the ocean. I wrap the blanket around Yaya's thin shoulders, and he hums his thanks. A faint smile plays on his lips. Towards the end of his life, my grandfather becomes a man of fewer and fewer words. And one day he passes, uncomplaining, to the other side, as if dozing off into one of his naps. I am there, and I know exactly what to do. I am not afraid. Many years later, I realized with agonizing regret that none of my voice memos, those many random, fanciful, and mischievous recordings, none are of my Yeye's voice. But I can still hear him sometimes as if he's right beside me, in between the rumble of passing buses, before the clink of a spoon against a chipped ceramic teacup, or after the mournful lament of a ship's foghorn. I know so much more than before, and I can hear so much more now too. It is always around us, life we can no longer see.
I hope you enjoyed listening to Maureen Tai reading her poem, Life We Can No Longer See. Many thanks to the Eaton Hotel for allowing me to use their recording studio to record the following interview. How are you today, and how does it feel being here, first of all?
I'm great. I'm extremely humbled by the fact that, this poem that I wrote 5 years ago is getting sort of a little mini revival, thanks to people like you who believe in the timelessness of writing and storytelling. So thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Well, thank you for being on the show. First of all, about your poem, your work, I think, reflects both elements of Malaysian and Hong Kong culture. Is that right? Can you comment a little bit on that, if you drew from any of your experience, or what you think those sort of cultural elements like the food and language and expressions bring to the poem itself?
Well, I'm Malaysian, so a lot of those cultural elements do sort of filter into my writing. And then, of course, I'm living in Hong Kong now, and I have children who are teenagers. And so I'm also incorporating a lot of their experiences secondhand that I see. Some people can just write and pull ideas out of the air. For me, I get the most inspiration actually from things I know personally. So while the prose poem itself is a work of fiction, a lot of people have said, "Oh, is that your grandfather? Did you have that relationship with your grandfather?" And actually, I didn't. I had zero relationship with both of my grandparents. One who passed away not long after I was born, and my other grandfather was extremely distant. So I actually didn't have a close relationship with my grandfather at all. So the whole piece is a work of fiction, but what I wanted to do was write about the sort of relationship I would want to have, but grounded in something very real, which were the cultural elements of my own background plus the environment I live in now. So that's why in the poem there's so much descriptive language about what the young boy, what he sees, what he hears, and what he does within a Hong Kong context. And I think that just gave me, in a way, some sort of a ground from which to start the story, and then the whole relationship unfolded as a work of fiction.
Let's talk about the theme of aging, loss, and guilt, which are all intertwined in your poem. The narrator expresses feelings of guilt and embarrassment about caring for Ye. How do you think that these emotions, especially coming from a young person, reflect broader societal attitudes towards aging and caregiving in general?
Well, I think in Asian society, certainly the very traditional Chinese, Malaysian environment that I grew up in, and certainly in Chinese culture, death is taboo, right? People don't like to talk about death. The number 4, which sounds like death when you pronounce it, is they scrub it from building numbers, and so anything inauspicious in Chinese culture seems to be linked with death. So death is a no-go zone. And I think, certainly even when I was growing up, for example, when my own grandfather, who I wasn't very close with, when he was in the hospital and on his deathbed, I wasn't actually allowed to go because it's death. And, you don't go near death for fear of courting it. So you don't talk about death for fear of having it come into your own life. And the thing that struck me as I grew older was that, death is, as the teen knows in the poem, it's unavoidable, right? There is no other certainty but that our lives will end at some point. And so I think for myself, from a very young age, because there was all this secrecy around it and this taboo around it, and being the sort of, contrarian that I am, I just felt, well, I want to confront this emotion. And when you do confront this emotion, because there is no manual, nobody talks about it, you end up feeling all these emotions that guilt and embarrassment and fear and sadness, and sometimes even you wish for it because you wish for it to end somebody's suffering, for example. So there's this conflicting. I don't think anybody can say, oh, I have this one feeling towards death. I think people struggle with it because it is probably the biggest issue for everybody, and we're just not facing it because we distract ourselves with living. I've been very fortunate. I've not experienced personally the death of someone very, very close to me, but that, as I'm getting older, is becoming much more clearer now. There are people in my life who themselves are facing death squarely in the face. So that actually has made it, to me, much more important that we bring back the discussion about death into my writing, so that it can raise some questions for people, or it can actually trigger some emotions for people who are themselves grappling with it but have nobody to speak about it to. I mean, it's my own exploration, and my writing group friends will tell you that in my stories, somebody dies. So I'm like, I have death lurking everywhere. But I do feel it is one of those topics that we don't face for a multitude of reasons. And I'd like to explore those reasons.
Yes, and I found it very interesting that the narrator is sort of left on his own to sort of get through all of that. The parents are they're in the background, but very discreet. We don't know about them a lot, even though obviously they are probably doing a lot, at least in terms of practical things to look after Ye. But then it seems like the connection that is the strongest within the household is Ye with the grandchild. So I found that really, really touching. And I want to talk a bit about the emotional tone of the poem, because even though you're tackling a very difficult subject like death, the poem oscillates between humor and sorrow a lot. And I found the balance between those two things very, very well done. I think it's very easy to go one side or the other. If it's too humorous, it's just a bit gimmicky and it's not really authentic. If it's too sorrowful, we can't really connect with the voice there. So how do you do that? Was that something that came easily to you? Was it challenging? Did you have to go back and change things? How did that work for you?
That's a great question. And I don't think I sat down and wrote with that idea that I had to balance a scale. I think that's been, over the years, my own personality. I find that, even the most difficult topics can be addressed or can be talked about if you have a little bit of levity. Because, at the end of the day, it's kind of, our lives are kind of messy, and they're also really funny. And I think you can try, it's a difficult balance to talk about something painful and not make light of it not trivialize it, as you say, with humor, but I think there is a way of approaching it with a sense that, it is not all so awful. There is always some way of looking at it with more sort of not joyful, but with a little bit more hope, with a little bit of a nod to the folly of our lives, right? So I've always done that. And you mentioned that the parents in the poem are very distant, and that typically is how parents are when there are difficult issues. They don't talk about it, right? They just focus on the practical stuff. But I've been very keen to make sure that in my parenting style, that I talk to my kids about these difficult things. One of my favorite writers of all time, Kate DiCamillo, who's a U.S. writer of children's books, one thing she talked about was the responsibility that writers have to young readers, is that you have to tell the truth and make it bearable. So in my writing, consciously or subconsciously, I feel like I need to tackle these difficult issues, but it also has to be done in a way that the reader doesn't just collapse under the weight of it, but actually finds a way of accepting the load, but then rising to the top. And so humor is actually, beautiful language, lyrical language does the same thing, but I think humor is very universal. And that is sort of my idea of the water wings that help, young readers or whoever's reading my work to sort of bear with the difficult topics that I'm talking about.
What motivated you to choose auditory elements and sounds to sort of tie everything together and make that connection happen between the narrator and Ye? And also, if you could talk a little bit about the inclusion of the smartphone and voice memos, bringing a modern element into the life of an elderly person, and how you think technology impacts relationships and creativity. That would be really great.
Sure. Well, I'll be honest. I didn't come up with the idea. The real trigger for this poem was a writing competition, a short story competition that was put out a few years ago. And the theme was write a story that is based on the sounds of Hong Kong. And I like taking walks around the city, and I thought, what sounds of Hong Kong? I thought that was quite interesting, but I didn't know what sounds of Hong Kong were. So I walked around and I was listening, and then because there's this voice memo function on the phone, I thought, well, I'm going to use and record some sounds for Hong Kong. So I did. So I recorded a few sounds as I walked around places I normally walk to. So I walked to the pier, I walked to the market, I walked to the MTR. To a cha chan tang, and collected these sounds, and that's actually how the story came to me. It was just through the sounds generated because I was trying to write a short story for a competition. So while I hate the phone, I really do, I still do, it's a real bittersweet sort of relationship I have with it. I also recognize that there are a lot of amazing things that we can do with the phone if we choose to use it that way. And that's, I have, again, teenage kids who are constantly scrolling through Instagram reels and looking at inane memes and all that sort of thing. And I think there's a time and a place for that. But I also think there are ways of using the phone that you can, that can be beneficial to you and that you can use to create beautiful things and actually to be in, as you said, have a sort of connection with other people. I mean, we all talk about how the internet's fantastic and the phone is great because you can communicate and be closer to people. And that absolutely is true. I mean, being able to WhatsApp call for free grandparents who live on the other side of the world or friends who've moved away, all that is wonderful. But I do think people need to be a bit more creative than that. So part of the reason for incorporating the voice memo element into the story was really to sort of encourage people to, there are different functions in your smartphone. You can use that to be closer to the people around you, sharing a joke on WhatsApp or sharing meaningful poetry to your friends on WhatsApp. All those are really small ways of using technology, but they are probably the reason why the technology was created, so that we could be closer. But unfortunately, the use is being dictated by powerful media companies and content providers who just want to suck up our cash and our eyeballs. We're being moved away from some of these very basic actions that you can take to become a better human being.
And I know you do some work with schools. You do school visits where you talk about writing. And one of the workshops that you do with children and teenagers is using your phone to make good art. Is that right?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that and what that looks like, working with young people and trying to persuade them to use their phone, make better use of it for creativity?
Well, thank you, Julia. And, I have to credit you for giving me the opportunity to create that talk several years ago. That was during the COVID years. But yes, I do use the smartphone because at the end of the day, we can't tell kids not to use their smartphones. So we have to say, so for me, and this is again based on my own parenting of my own teens, saying, look, I don't want you to throw away your phone, but you can use it in this way. And so I use my published works, this prose poem, as well as a collage that I created using the phone, a slipper collage, which is a picture of 100 slippers on the feet of Filipino helpers in Hong Kong. I use those to demonstrate to kids how they can use their phones to create something, a piece of good art, which is not, I'm not talking about objectively good or bad. It's art that only you can make. So it's a story that only you can tell. And, the reception has always been great. I mean, I've done the talk to small groups, but also to big. I'm actually doing it tomorrow, to a group of 130 students, which will be quite large. But I think, the kids like being challenged to or given different ideas, and they've always warmed up to it. So I think children are receptive to being guided. And as an adult, you should be able to try and challenge and guide the child towards better usage of it. Because if you tell them to throw it away, they won't, because you wouldn't. So it's really about helping them figure out a better use for the tools that they have in their pockets.
Let's talk a bit about specific authors or works that have influenced your writing style or your approach to storytelling. You were telling me earlier about a Malaysian author, Shirley Lim. Shirley Lim. Maybe you can tell us a bit about her or just other writers who you think have had an influence on your writing.
Shirley Lim Gyok Lin is a Malaysian poet who lives in the US, and her book, Among the White Moon Faces, was the first book I read as a young adult that featured a Malaysian Chinese protagonist. It was the first book in where I saw myself. And I still remember that moment reading the book. It's a memoir, written in prose, but very beautiful language because Shirley is a poet. It drove me to tears because it was the first time I'd ever seen myself or my story in a book. And I think that's very important. That has influenced certainly my, why am I writing for children? Why do I choose to put my energies into creating works for children? Is because I think every child does deserve to see themselves in a book. And it made a huge difference to me because it was validation. But it was also a sense that, my story, I'm not alone. There are other people who feel this way. And also that story, my story, may have some value to somebody in the future, whether I tell my story just to my kids or I publish a book and have it, read by lots of people. She set me off on this writing journey a long time ago, but I never actually started writing until, in the 2017 thereabouts, when I took a sabbatical from work and decided I wanted to write some words for my kids. And that was when another librarians are golden. They are the best people in the world. And this particular librarian at my kids' school read a piece that I had written and said, you should actually try and publish this. And that's set me off on my journey. In terms of, writers who have influenced me, oh my gosh, there have been so many, because I write all sorts of things. I write prose poetry, I write adult poetry, I write creative nonfiction. So I can't really pinpoint any one particular author, but I will say that there are just so many incredible children's authors out there who write such wonderful, wonderful stories. If you're grown up, read some children's literature, because the richness and the depth of the literature is just so amazing that they should not just be for kids alone. They're really meant to be for adults to read together with their children, which is another thing that I'm very keen to promote, which is reading aloud with your children, to children. Even if the child, so to speak, is no longer a child, a young adult, whatever, there's a real benefit of reading books together.
The truth is, no matter what they say, everyone loves to be read to. Everyone loves stories. So I really love that you're promoting that. You mentioned that when you read A Shirley Lim a while back, that was the first time you encountered a character who was like you. Do you think that since then, has there been any breakthrough in publishing in general? Are you seeing more diversity in the voices and narrators and writers that we have access to for children or adults? Or is that something that still needs a lot of work?
I think there's a big push towards diversity, because we recognize now that the world is not just one color. And so, there's a lot more literature from writers of sort of the people of color, so people from different backgrounds, not just UK, Anglo-Saxon, UK, US, European, but, people from Africa, people from Asia. But it feels to me still that we don't have stories from Asia by Asian writers, for example, that talk about lives in Asia, except if it is about, terrible lives of poverty or trauma or war or any of those other, big global events that are known by kids. So it feels like a lot of the narrative about Asian life is that it's a terrible, terrible life, and everybody should run over and emigrate and go to the great countries of America and US and UK to make their fortunes, because Asia's awful. And I think what we lack still is Asian stories about Asian people just living great lives in Asia. So I would love to see much more of that, and I wish publishers and agents and readers would be a bit more open to reading truly diverse literature, which means reading about a life in a country that you have no link to, you have no tie to, but you just want to read it because you want to learn about how a boy spends his day in Botswana, or how a little girl spends her day in Ho Chi Minh City, right? So it's just about, coming out of your comfort zone and really embracing diversity, not as a way to understand yourself, but as a way to understand that other person. That's true diversity, and I don't think we're quite there yet.
I agree with you. And if I think back of my work in school libraries, I think one way of looking at it is not making specific sections, or not having, the Asian authors here, right, the African authors there, or a diversity and inclusion section or something.
Yes.
And I know lots of my colleagues are working on that. So I hope that collectively we can make a difference with that. We did touch on the fact that Hong Kongers might not be the most avid readers for a number of reasons, but you've had a lot of insight into that, either as a writer or as someone who managed the Hong Kong Literary Festival previously. Is there anything that you would like to share about how writers or librarians or other members of the literary scene in Hong Kong can advocate for more reading in young people and the benefits that could have? What can we do for people to read more, and why is it important?
Well, reading is important for, all the reasons that you can think of, language acquisition, experience acquisition, empathy, being engaged in an activity that isn't an instant dopamine hit, right? Just it takes time to you have to get to the end of the story to feel the satisfaction, but it takes time to get to the end of the story. So reading itself is a wonderful, wonderful, critical thing to do as a human being. And I think in Hong Kong, a lot of parents will say they want their kids to read more. And parents will say, I want to help my kids read more. How do I do it? And the first thing I'll ask them is, well, do you read? And most parents will say, well, no, because I don't have time to. And that's the general answer to anybody that you ask is, I don't have time. Kids don't have time because they're overscheduled and they have so many activities, they really don't have time. And adults, because they're working 2 jobs or they've got caregiving, and so they don't have time. So it really is the idea that if you cannot go past the idea that you do have time, that you can make time for reading, then I'm afraid you're never going to get to the point where you have people who enjoy reading. So I would say, and this is Hong Kong specific because we just are such a busy society, a busy community focused on, the markers of success that we all think about, getting into the top universities, getting into these jobs that make you gobs of money and driving a pink Cadillac down the street. And it's like, I think people really need to reconsider, well, what's really important in your lives? If reading is important, then you need to make time for it. And it doesn't have to be a lot of time. It can be 15 minutes, 20 minutes. The time that you take to scroll through Instagram and watch, a whole bunch of inane reels, you could use that time to read. And so my exhortation to anybody in Hong Kong is really think about your day. Think about the 20 minutes. Think about when you could have this 20 minutes to read, and then just pick up a book and read. The libraries here are fantastic. The public libraries here are so well stocked. There's access to a lot of reading material online, of course. A lot of my writing, for example, is free, as well as a lot of other, top-notch writers in the world. So just the material is there, but you need, whoever it is, needs to see the value in carving out even 20 minutes a day to read. And read together with someone, read together with your child, read together with your spouse, read to your grandmother, read, whatever. Just carve out the time to read every day. And I think we'll get there.
It's the regularity, isn't it? More
Absolutely.
than the time, the consistency, reading, like you said, maybe 15 minutes a day, maybe that MTR journey.
Exactly.
Becomes an
That's right.
opportunity to read.
Don't buy anything from Taobao. Just spend your time and read for 15 minutes and it's free. So much of it
Stop
is
buying
free.
stocks, read more.
Exactly.
Maureen, can you tell us a little bit about what you're currently working on and your future projects? Are there any themes, subjects you are exploring in your writing at the moment, or that you're planning to in the near future?
The one theme I will continue to focus on is, as I've mentioned before, Asian stories. It's stories about living in Asia, being in Asia, but stories which have the timelessness, so that, it's the timelessness of the human experience. And the themes, I think, that give me the greatest satisfaction in terms of writing are the difficult themes. It is about loss. It's about grief. It's about death. And more it's about really how to look after people you care for, even when you think that's futile. So I think it's stories which try to bring hope from a situation of hopelessness, but with humor. I'm working on a whole bunch of stuff at the moment. I'm working on a verse novel at the moment about a boy who's undergoing a very big change, a move to a different country. I'm also working on a poetry collection about things that I'm asking for permission to hate. if that's that might be the most succinct way of putting it. So
Should be the title, I think. It's quite catchy.
yes, I've got the title already. I mean, some people think it's a bit crazy, but I get you're supposed to get the title after you've written the thing. But I've got the title. It's called Can I Hate You Now?
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to reading it. Do you have any advice for aspiring writers, especially those interested in exploring similar themes of identity, family, like you said, death, and very big subjects like that, or cultural heritage?
People have told me, write what you know. And I think that's right in terms of your own, what you know the best is your own experience. And if you turn inward and mine that deep knowledge and mind the difficult parts, because I think there are parts of our lives sometimes that we try to ignore or we try to explain away or we don't want to think about anymore. Sometimes you do need to go to those really difficult parts, reopen old wounds, and see what's there. And there's a real rich there's fertile soil there for a lot of stories. So look into your own life, look inward, but also read. I mean, read as much as you can about the genre that you're trying to write. If you're trying to write short stories, read lots and lots of short story writers. Really deep dive into other people's stories, because that's the way you sort of get a sense of how other writers do it. And in that process, either you start off imitating them, because you always do. I mean, when I started writing as a very young child, I would copy Mr. Men stories, for example. So Mr. Strong, I had a Mr. Red. And I would write my own story, but it would be very close to what Roger Hargreaves wrote. So you might start off sounding like someone who you admire, but the more you read of other writers and the more you write, the more you'll discover your own voice. And that's very important, to have actually come to a position where you are telling your own stories in the only way you know how. And that's when you've made good art.
One thing that I really love about you, Maureen, is that you're very good at striking those little conversations with people. You're just very good at a little bit of small talk or just showing someone you've noticed them and they have some sort of little importance in your day, at least in that moment. And again, coming back to the poem, sound is very important. And you actually had to set out and listen to the sounds of Hong Kong in order to write your piece. So is that something that you do consciously to remind yourself that you must be mindful of your surroundings, notice these things? How essential is it to your writing in general?
That's very perceptive. It is not something I was taught. It's not something I developed. It's a sense that you are here and I am here. And it's the acknowledgement that we're both present in this one moment, which will be 2 minutes ago or a second ago. It's past, but we are actually here together. And I think a lot of this has come because, as you know, one of my parents has Alzheimer's, and so it is a moment by moment existence. And he has actually taught me. My father has taught me that there is no past or future. There's only really now. So I've had to learn to focus my attentions on the immediate interaction. And I found that has been a powerful learning for me with my father. But I've carried it into my day-to-day interactions with pretty much everyone, because at the end of the day, I'm only here with you now. And I won't be with you here in, half an hour from now. But I am here with you now. And while I'm here, I hear you, you hear me. And that's the biggest gift you can give someone. And I think we need to be conscious that we have the ability to give that gift to every single person that we meet, as long as we take the time. So it's really about taking that second, taking that minute to be in that moment with this other person and to say, I hear you. I see you. And you know what? We are here and we exist. And that's a great feeling to have for yourself, but also to hopefully give to the other person.
Yes, we are here. Well, thank you so much for being here, Maureen. This was very insightful conversation. So thank you for your time. And I look forward to reading all of your future poems, short stories, creative nonfiction. Where can we find information about you and your projects?
Thank you, Julia. You have been instrumental in this journey as well that I'm on. All my work can be found on my website. It's www.maureentai.com.
All right, lovely. Thank you very much. Have a great Sunday. Welcome to the local lingo section of the podcast. I have to say I was puzzled by a certain phrase that Ye says to his grandchild that I suspect comes directly from Cantonese. Aidan, do you know which one I'm referring to?
Yeah, I think I know which one you mean. Is it 我食鹽多過你食米?
Yes, that's the one. 我食鹽多過你食米.
Very good. Literally, I've eaten more salt than you've eaten rice. At first glance, this might sound like someone bragging about their sodium intake, but there is a deeper cultural flavor here. It's something elders say to remind the younger generation, I have got more life experience than you, so listen up.
Wait, so if my grandma says this, she's basically telling me she's wiser because she's seasoned?
Exactly. Salt here symbolizes years of experience, while rice is everyday staple, the stuff you think you know. Salt, on the other hand, is seasoning you eat in small quantities. It's like saying, I've lived through things you haven't even imagined yet. Plus, in Chinese culture, respecting elders is huge.
Got it. Now, hypothetically, if I replied, well, I've eaten more pizza than you've eaten noodles, would that be a cultural faux pas?
Absolutely. Save the stats for your friends.
Okay, thanks for breaking it down, Aidan.
No worries.
This was your monthly dose of words from the fragrant harbour, brought to you by the writers of Hong Kong past and present. Have a great month of reading, and until next time on Hong Kong Lit Club, Hatigin.